Come on, ladies, let's get information. I'm so sorry, I can't hear you over the glass ceiling shattering. Hello, it's the internet. My name's Craig Montgomery, and we're here today to talk about the things that make you say, who even am I? And today we're talking about women. And specifically how the word women is used to address 50% of the world's population as if they're one person. A couple of weeks ago, I went down to Carbondale, Illinois to watch the solar eclipse that happened, which was awesome, BT dubs. I tagged along with a friend on a family vacation, and I got the pleasure of spending some time with her niece and her niece's friend, who were 11 and 12. When we got back, I was told that the girls really liked me. Aw, cute. And that they were surprised that a boy would talk to them about, like, normal things. Oh my god, so sad. It was so sad. I was heartbroken that it was that noticeable that I treated them differently than the other men in their lives just by listening to them talk about whatever was on their minds. And that got me thinking about how unfair it is that they're already dealing with gender norms being enforced on them at such a young age. So I had some thoughts, and here they are. So anytime we form ideas or opinions about an identity and speak at a group of people that we assign that identity to, it's problematic. This is always going to be an action that puts a box around the people that we're speaking about, which understandably causes issues, especially if this is happening directly. Definitions are inherently limiting, so it feels pretty awful when someone else defines you and imposes a set of limitations on you that you have no control over. And I would be hard-pressed to think of an identity group that has limitations attached to it in a way that affects as large of a population as gender. And there are problematic male gender norms, for sure, but today is about the ladies, so men, sit down, and don't you dare manspread. Or mansplain for that matter. Don't man. Here's an extremely brief exposition on the difference between sex and gender, because it's very important to separate the two. Sex refers to your biology, so we as humans can be born as male, female, or intersex, whereas your gender refers to a social identity. For a simple comparison, my body is male in the same way that my body has two arms. It's a physical attribute. Whereas me being a man is the same way as me being American, or gay, or a pupper dad. These are ways that I move through the world and I interact with the people inside of it. Societies are pretty strict on enforcing gender norms, so we are pretty used to seeing biological sex match with gender identity. So that's male body with a male social identity, and then vice versa with a female body having a female social identity. What that means changes from culture to culture, but this dictates what a person is able to wear on their body, what public spaces they're allowed to use, and it's so detailed it even goes down to the social expectations of how a person's allowed to move their body. Think about in America, a man walking effeminately down the street, he's much more likely to be called out and shamed. That's social norms in action. This is an extremely complex and sensitive topic. I by no means want to be dismissive of that. The norms themselves just aren't the focus of today's discussion. I just wanted to open the door to them because these two topics do touch. So, despite the fact that basically 50% of the population of the world is female, they're a minority group in almost every single developed country. And that's because the terms majority and minority don't specifically talk about the size of a population, they're referring to power structure. In a democratic society, like ours in America, it is the idea that the minority and majority groups fall to smaller and larger population groupings, respectively. The concept being that it's fair to give larger groups what they want because it benefits the most people out of any decision made. Now that is like politics that I'm talking about, but it is relevant because politics are extremely intertwined with our social structures. They inform popular opinion about gender, and they also write laws that enforce those opinions. Plus, the language that they use in their discussions on the topics frequently has a top-down structure. Meaning the language that's used to discuss gender and politics, it becomes pervasive in our culture, and as we use that language to discuss gender, it shapes the way that a lot of people think about gender, and by extension themselves. And in terms of gender in politics, Men have had disproportionate power for millennia. In the Western world, we idolize attributes that we associate with masculinity. And I want to emphasize the word associate there, because it's totally a social construct that we associate strength, competitiveness, and stoicism with masculinity, while traits like compassion, creativity, and expression are considered feminine. Inside every single one of us is the same thing. A person who has desires and needs and goals and fears and a complex history and an infinity of possibilities in their future. So many of the people in my life that have been my greatest sources of strength and guidance have been women. And it's so disheartening to watch them battle with the limiting messages they've been given by society. Because gender is as malleable of an identity as any other. It just happens to be one that we're assigned rather than one that we're typically allowed to choose. For example, I'm a gamer. I like video games. That is an identity that I can choose to present to other people. But it doesn't mean that I like all video games. I personally don't like first-person shooters, but I do like platformers and RPGs, so I can shift that identity to fit my tastes and preferences. That kind of flexibility is just not considered socially acceptable when it comes to gender identities, which I'm having a hard time understanding why. From my very small personal perspective, the only causal reason I can really come up with is the church's influence on the development of the Western world. But from my understanding, the Eastern world is pretty strict on enforcing gender norms as well, and they weren't really developed by the same church, so. And as far as my opinion goes, I don't really see a reason for us to enforce the gender norms at all. There's not really a moral logic behind it. We've already seen that women entering the workforce hasn't broken society, and that was a huge change in gender norms, so we're not at risk of our social structures collapsing. And what we're losing is the ability for people to be wholly, truly themselves and offer their beautiful gifts to the world. Men who aren't allowed to express emotion and women who aren't allowed to be powerful isn't working for us. And there are so many people in the in-between spaces that are just completely ignored by the binary. So it's working against those of us who do fit it, and it's completely ignoring anyone who doesn't fit it. I say all of this in the hopes that we as a community can continue to talk about it and learn. The only way that we can free ourselves from what these ideologies do to the way we think about other people and ourselves and how we form our social groupings is to continue to learn and really expose ourselves and grow our awareness about what they are. I also say it in the hopes that there will be fewer girls out there in the world who are surprised that a man would listen to them talk as if they're an actual human being. We can do better. We have to do better. So let's talk about it. What have your experiences with gender norms been like? You know, like what's something that you really wish that you could do but you haven't allowed yourself to because of the social stigma? I've mentioned this on the channel before, but for me it's probably painting my nails. I really love color and I think nail polish is cool, but I just don't want to deal with the attention that the nail polish brings, so I haven't allowed myself to do it. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you like the video, give it a like. If you like what I've been doing, please subscribe. I release videos every Tuesday and they come to you that way, which is cool. I'd really like to have a discussion about this and all of us kind of like dig in and really talk about it. This is something that I really just scratched the surface of. It's so big. People do like PhDs on this kind of stuff and I am not an expert, so please be kind. Okay, yeah. As always, take care of yourself.